Hey kiddos! Today we will be reviewing the different types of angles. This is continuing our geometry unit, so first we started with circles, and now we are moving on to angles. Before we talk about the different types of angles, we're going to review the definition of an angle itself. So an angle is formed by two rays that share the same endpoint. And that endpoint, where that two rays share, that's what we call a vertex. So first, let's go ahead and write down our definition of an angle, and then we'll talk about the different types of angles. So again, an angle is formed by two rays that share the same endpoint. What that means is if you had a line, and on one side of the line there was a dot, and on the other side there was an arrow, that is a ray. A ray is a line that goes on for forever in one direction. So say you have one ray going in one direction, and then you take another one and you attach it to that same endpoint, but this ray goes a different direction, still going on for forever, but in an opposite direction. That place where they meet is what we would call the angle, and that's also the vertex, where those two rays share that endpoint, okay? So let's take a look at some of the different types of angles to help you further understand what an angle is and how they are all different. First, we are going to take a look at this angle here. This angle is what we call a straight angle. It's called a straight angle because it looks pretty straight. So if we take a look at our straight angle, what you'll notice is we have our end point here, right in the center, and we have our two rays following the definition of our angle going in opposite directions. So we have ray 1 and ray 2, and they share that endpoint. So this is classified as an angle because it's following that definition that we first reviewed. What makes this a straight angle, besides the fact that it looks straight, is that it has a measure of 180 degrees. So if on one of your activities we ask you to tell us the definition of a straight angle, you would say where two rays share the same endpoint and form 180 degrees. That 180 degrees might look like this. It might be labeled like this on some of your activities. You might see a little arch. That's showing you that this whole thing is the angle. So a straight angle has a measure of 180 degrees. Let's go ahead and take a look at our next angle. This angle is what we call an acute angle. And we call it an acute angle because it's nice and little, it's nice and cute, okay? So we have an acute angle. And what you might notice about this angle is that the angle here, it's actually kind of small. So what helps me remember that an acute angle is a small angle is that little kids and little puppies and little pets are really, really cute. An acute angle also has a measure between 0 and 90 degrees. So an acute angle can be any degree in between 0 and 90. So I wrote has a measure of in between 0 degrees and 90 degrees, or we could write less than 90 degrees. So what you'll notice is in our acute angle, we still have those two rays that meet at that same endpoint or vertex. And this little angle inside here is nice and small and cute. So we know that it has to be in between 0 degrees and 90 degrees, or it has to be less than 90 degrees. The reason it has to be less than 90 degrees is because of the next angle that we will go over. This angle here is what we call a right angle. And you've probably seen this type of angle and maybe even learned about it before. So we have a right angle. A lot of the time, in right angles, you might see a little box like this in the corner. That box is telling you that this angle is a right angle, and right angles have an exact measure of 90 degrees. Okay? So that's why when we talk about our acute angle, it has to be less than 90 degrees. Because if an angle is exactly 90 degrees, that's what we call a right angle. One shape that you might know that has a lot of right angles is a square. All right? So that is what a right angle is. And last, we will take a look at our angle over here. Something that you'll notice is that this angle is kind of big. It's not nice and little like an acute angle. It's not exactly 90 degrees like a right angle, but it's not as big as a straight angle. It doesn't make that straight line with its rays. This is what we call an obtuse angle. Something that helps me remember what an obtuse angle is just the word obtuse sounds really big to me. And an obtuse angle has a measure between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. So it's way bigger than our acute angle. It's pretty big compared to our our right angle, but it's not as big as our straight angle, okay? So for this, we're going to write in between 90 degrees and 180 degrees, or we can just say greater than 90 degrees. All right? So these are different types of angles. As a quick review, an angle is formed by two rays that share the same endpoint. So let's take a look at the types of angles and talk about the rays, the endpoint, and the degree. In a straight angle, you have your two rays, ray 1, ray 2, sharing your same endpoint. This measures 180 degrees. So a straight angle is equal to 180 degrees. Next, we can go to our acute angle. You still have your two rays sharing that same endpoint or vertex. You have a nice itty bitty little angle, and that angle is equal to anything between 0 and 90 degrees, or any degree less than 90. Next, we have our right angle. Again, we still have those two rays that are sharing our same endpoint, so ray 1, ray 2, endpoint. And remember, in our right angles, you might see a little box in the angle, and that tells you right away that it is a right angle because it is exactly 90 degrees. No more, no less, exactly 90. And last, we have our obtuse angle. Again, we still have our two rays, 1, 2, that share an endpoint. And this angle here is pretty big, just like the word obtuse sounds pretty big. And we know that an obtuse angle is in between 90 degrees and 180 degrees, or greater than 90 degrees, because it's much bigger than an acute angle. It's a little bigger than a right angle, but it's not nearly as big as a straight angle in that straight line. Right? If you have any questions, please email myself or your classroom teacher, and we'd be happy to answer.